The harem slept in silence, but it was not peace. Behind the carved screens of gold lattice, 1,000 eyes watched the same single door. The moonlight, soft as silk, crept across the marble floor toward the sultan's private chamber, where a single lamp still burned. No one moved. To step into that light without command was treason, yet to be forgotten by it was worse, a kind of living death. In the imperial harem, beauty was currency, obedience was armor, and survival depended on mastering the art of invisibility. Every breath was measured, every glance could kill. For the women of empire, the night was not for sleep, it was a test. This was not myth. It was the architecture of absolute power. The royal harem of the Ottoman Empire was not a paradise of pleasure, as foreign travelers imagined. It was a fortress of women, a place where politics, desire, and religion fused into ritual. The word harem itself meant the forbidden, the sacred inner sanctum from which law, lineage, and legend flowed. But within those high walls of Topkapi Palace, every rule was designed to protect the throne, not the hearts of those who served it. A whisper could decide succession, a letter could bring execution, and every night, under candlelight, hundreds of women rehearsed perfection, knowing that one misstep, one unpermitted gesture, could erase them from history entirely. The harem was its own universe, self-contained, invisible to the world beyond. To enter it was to surrender a name. The women inside were no longer daughters or wives. They became ranks, titles, roles. At the top stood the valid sultan, the sultan's mother, revered as the second most powerful person in the empire. Beneath her were concubines, attendants, and novices, each trained in the disciplines of obedience, etiquette, poetry, and silence. Every movement in this world followed ritual. The corridors echoed with the soft rhythm of slippered feet, the whisper of silk, the faint rustle of veils. To be summoned to the sultan's chamber was the highest honor and the greatest danger. For the chosen woman, the night could end in fortune or in final exile. When a woman was selected, the ceremony began long before she entered his room. Servants bathed her in rose water, perfumed her hair, and draped her in garments chosen by the valid sultan herself. Every fold of fabric, every scent was political, a declaration of loyalty disguised as beauty. Even the jewels she wore could signal alliances between palace factions. But she never walked alone. Eunuchs, the black-robed guardians of the harem, escorted her in silence through torchlit halls. Their eyes betrayed nothing. Once the heavy doors closed behind her, the rest of the harem waited in suspended breath. For dawn would reveal everything. If she emerged smiling, gifts were distributed, songs sung. If she did not return, her chamber would be emptied before sunrise, her possessions burned, her name struck from the registers. To outsiders, the harem was a prison. To those within, it was a battlefield without swords. Alliances formed over poetry, embroidery, and prayer. Women competed not through open conflict but through mastery of subtlety, the placement of a gift, the recitation of a verse that reminded the sultan of his childhood, the perfectly timed act of humility. Behind these gestures lay espionage. The valid sultan kept a network of informants, concubines loyal to her, eunuchs bound by oath, who reported every conversation whispered behind curtains. A single careless phrase could be interpreted as ambition, and ambition was death. Yet the sultan himself was often a prisoner of this system. Few men ever saw the harem's inner rooms. Its women were his shadow court, shaping his moods, decisions, even wars. When he smiled, nations rose. When he turned cold, men were executed. And the women who influenced him most became invisible architects of empire. Consider Harem Sultan, the once enslaved woman who became queen. She rewrote the rules by refusing to be transient. She demanded marriage, an unthinkable breach of harem tradition, and in doing so, made herself co-ruler. The old order trembled, for if one woman could rewrite the script, others might follow. From that moment, the harem ceased to be a secluded garden. It became a political engine, a place where the future of the empire was conceived not in battlefields, but in whispered counsel by candlelight. With power came peril. The rules of the harem were clear, and their punishments merciless. A woman accused of betrayal, even falsely, faced disappearance. No public trial, no last word. The corridors would whisper of her only until her scent faded from her chamber. The black eunuchs, sworn to absolute secrecy, carried out the law. Their presence in the harem embodied paradox. They were both trusted and feared, capable of witnessing everything, yet forbidden to feel. They enforced silence with the same devotion that others gave to prayer. Within those walls, mercy was rare, but calculation was constant. Some women fought back not with violence, but with mastery of ritual. A misplaced jewel could signal submission or rebellion. A single folded note, hidden in a garment, could ignite war. The empire's future hung on the gestures of women whose names history forgot, though their influence echoed in treaties, marriages, and edicts across continents. During one reign, two rival factions, one loyal to the sultan's mother, the other to his favorite, nearly brought down the court. Poisoned gifts, falsified letters, mysterious illnesses, every disappearance rewritten as divine fate. The sultan himself grew paranoid, ordering astrologers to read the stars before entering his own chambers. When lightning struck the palace dome one summer night, it was said to be the heavens passing judgment on his sins. By the empire's later centuries, the harem had become less a place of desire than of duty. The women who entered its gates came from every corner of the realm: Circassia, Crimea, Greece, Arabia, each trained to serve an idea larger than herself. The sultan's body was sacred property of the state, and to touch it without invitation was heresy punishable by death. But even within this gilded captivity, small rebellions flourished. Women wrote secret poems and hid them in the seams of their garments. Others smuggled messages to courtiers outside through loyal eunuchs. A few rose to positions of extraordinary influence, like Kazem Sultan, who ruled as regent for her son and grandson, governing the empire from behind screens. Her signature appeared on imperial decrees. Foreign ambassadors wrote that the empire bows not to the sultan, but to his mother. Yet the price of such power was blood. When the factions turned against her, she was strangled within her own chamber by the same guards who had once knelt before her. Her death marked the end of the sultanate of women, that century when the harem quietly ruled the world. Still, her legend remained a warning. Even the most powerful woman in the empire was never safe beneath the same roof as the sultan. The royal harem was never about pleasure. It was about control, over bodies, over bloodlines, over the image of divine order. Behind its gates, empires were born and buried, ruled by women whose power could never be named aloud. To the outside world, it was paradise. To those who lived within, it was purgatory, a cage of silk where loyalty was survival and silence was prayer. Centuries later, the echoes of those forbidden nights still whisper through the palace walls. Every jewel, every verse, every vanished name reminds us that in the empire of desire, the most dangerous act was not defiance, it was being remembered. Next episode, The Church of Bones. Why thousands offer their skeletons to God.